Hi everybody, it is Sophie with the Alaska Raptor Center, and this beautiful bird to my right is Sika. You might have seen her on a few of our videos. She is our largest female ambassador bald eagle here at the center, and she's going to be joining us today for a little meet and greet. We're going to talk a little bit about her story, how she came to the Alaska Raptor Center, what her life looks like now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about bald eagles in general. We have quite a few questions from you guys. I have a really nice list of curated questions that we've been getting over the last few days to answer here live for you guys. So we will start off by, first of all, just introducing who we are. A lot of you are probably avid followers, so for that we really appreciate it. But for those of you who may not be super familiar, so this is the Alaska Raptor Center. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and what we do is we rehabilitate and release bald eagles and other species of raptors back out into the wild once they've come into us with a number of different injuries. We do specialize in raptors, the bald eagle being our #1 patient, but we take all sorts of birds. So not just raptors like eagles, owls, hawks, falcons, and kites and osprey, but all species of birds. So from tiny little hummingbirds all the way up to trumpeter swans and everything in between. How do you feel, Sitka? What do you think? Good girl. And so our main goal, of course, is to rehabilitate. So we bring in injured, orphaned bald eagles and other raptors, and we rehabilitate them and get them back out into the wild. They typically come in for a number of different reasons. We see about 80% of the reasons why these guys even come into us in the first place is unfortunately due to human cause. So we see a lot of things like car collisions, collisions with man-made objects like power lines, window strikes, a lot of cat bite related injuries for our smaller songbirds and things, from domestic cats being let outdoors. And we also see things like lead poisoning, especially during hunting season here in Alaska. And we even to this day see more malicious injuries like gunshot wounds. So we deal with those whenever they come in. And so when we have these rehab birds come in, of course, #1 goal, get them back out in the wild. But unfortunately, that's not always an option. Sometimes birds come into us with injuries that are a little too severe for them to be released, and they may stay here to be educational ambassadors for their species. And so Sika is an example of that. She's about 24, 25 years old, and she came into us in 2001. She's a little antsy, I think, because she's hungry. Good girl. And so she's probably going to work on that for a little bit of time. That's a nice little piece of salmon there. So Sika has been with us since 2001, 2002. She originally is that so good? She originally came in after an unfortunate car collision, and so when she was brought in, she had a few different injuries right off the bat that made us pretty concerned about her ability to be released back out into the wild. The first one you might even be able to see from your vantage point, I'm not entirely sure, but if you look on her right foot, that digit in the middle, right here, the talon seems to be a bit of the talon, or her nice long kind of claw, some people call it, but it's a talon. You might be able to see that it's a different color. It's a little white, gray, and it's a lot shorter than the other talons. So that one had some pretty big trauma to it, and she lost that talon. And so now it's just a little bit of a nub, and that's going to affect her perching and her ability to balance. The big one, though, is on the other side of her foot, on the very back. It's their back digit. It's called the helix. And this one is incredibly important for their ability to hunt successfully out in the wild, because these guys here in Southeast Alaska, our bald eagles, are primarily hunting shallow water fish like salmon and herring. And they need to be able to swoop down, stick their feet into the water, and be able to grab their prey successfully. From there, they go off, they land in a tree or somewhere safe, and they're able to eat their prey. But when you are missing your back toe, your back helix, your ability to fully grab and be able to balance and perch is incredibly inhibited when you are missing that toe. And so when she came in, she had quite a bit of trauma to it, so unfortunately that led to an amputation. And because she's turned around for you, you might be able to see it, I'm not entirely sure. But it's just like a little nub on the back of her foot. Along with that, if you look at her right wing, so the wing that is facing you right now, you can kind of see in comparison to the left wing that the feathers are a little out of place and it's a little droopy, especially when she stands back up or sits back up a little bit more straight. You'll be able to see that the wing itself is a little bit lower than that left wing. And what happened is when we brought her in and we did her full exam and we were looking at her wings, we noticed that she had a hole in the patagium part of her right wing. The patagium is sort of that fleshy, soft tissue bit. If this were my bird wing, it'd be kind of right about here underneath the bone. And although it healed, it's completely healed, it is still a hole, you can still put your finger through, it did cause a lifelong wing droop. And so that's going to affect her ability to fly. Sika can still fly. We make sure that she stays in the best shape possible and really maintains those flight muscles, but that affects her ability to be able to fly long distances. And so all of these injuries in combination led us to say, okay, if we were to release Sika back out to the wild, her quality of life would be very low. And so we decided to keep her as an educational ambassador, and she has been with us ever since. You heard me say prior that she is our biggest female ambassador, and we're going to talk a little bit about just basics with these guys. How fast do they fly? How much do they weigh? But let me go ahead and start off with some of our kind of Sika specialized questions here. And she might turn around, she might not. She might jump off the perch. This is called a bow perch. We're here just for some enrichment today. And she might kind of hop around wherever she wants to go. She does what she wants, really, within a certain constraints. But it'll be fun. We'll engage with her a little bit. We'll answer these questions, and we'll go from there. So the first question is going to be what specialized care does Sika get here at the center? She gets a lot of specialized care. Every single one of our educational ambassador raptors is going to be treated based on their natural history. So the way that I go about interacting with a peregrine falcon in their enclosure, on the glove, or whatever it may be, is going to be a lot different than the way that I interact with Sika or any of our other bald eagle ambassadors. With Sika, her natural history, what she does, what bald eagles do out in the wild, depending on the season, mating, courtship rituals, how they eat, how they sleep, all of these things that incorporate into what a bald eagle's life is sort of what their natural history is, to make it easy. And so we look at that natural history, and that is what helps us dictate how to interact with them. So with Sika, she gets a lot of different enrichment every single day. Enrichment for a bald eagle looks something like lots of things to shred, lots of bones to be able to eat. We'll give her deer bones, bear bones, and she'll devour those. She loves those quite a bit. And so she gets a lot of different specialized care, and it's, again, very dependent on the species. She gets coped and a routine health exam once a year, coped twice a year. Coping, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is the maintenance of their beak and their talons. And the routine health exam is incredibly important because not only are we looking at Sika's old injuries, so we're rechecking her feet, we're rechecking that amputation site, we're looking at her wing extension, we're looking at all of these different injuries, and we're looking at how they're progressing or how they're aging. And on top of that, we're looking at x-rays, we're looking at blood work, we're doing full blood panels as well to make sure everything looks good there. And we do these things to make sure that she is aging in under human care as best as possible, basically. So lots of different specialized care. It's kind of hard to talk about in such a short little live stream, but we can also always do a more extensive live stream on that if you are interested. Sika, do you like to get pets? That's a really common question that we get. Do the birds like to get pet? Do we pet them? The answer to that is absolutely no. Although these birds some of them have been under human care for, like Sika, she's about 24, 25 years old. She's been with us for such a long time. Even though they have been under human care for such a long time, these birds, we still consider them a wild animal, and therefore they're not predictable. And so with Sika, I really try, and all of the avian care specialists here at the center really try to treat them as our coworkers, because that's what Sika is. She is out here if I have her on the bow perch with me, or if she's on my glove and we're doing an educational program, she's working with me for that day. And she understands that through working, she gets something of a reward for that. And that's usually in most of the cases, it's going to be food as the reward. And so we really try and treat them as coworkers. They're not pets. We don't pet them, although they are very fluffy and they look very soft. We try to make sure that we respect them, they respect us. There's a lot of trust-based, there's lots of trust in this relationship that we have, and that is maintained by making sure I'm respecting her space. And you have to remember that raptors out in the wild, they don't really touch each other than when they're mating and when they are maybe fighting over food or territory. For the most part, they don't really sit there and preen each other. They're not, they're not doing any of those sorts of socializing behaviors except when they're producing offspring or, like I said, fighting over a big salmon or whatever it may be. And so for me to go up to her and try to scratch her head or touch her back or her wings, that's absolutely unnatural to her. And it would probably produce a response that is pretty fear-based and something that we don't want to encourage. Because again, we try to give the birds as much control as possible through positive reinforcement training, and that comes in the form of, not touching against their will. But when it comes to medical-based kind of behaviors that we train for, those are acceptable, of course. We will train our birds to allow us to do a keel feel. So when Sika is on the glove, I will cue to her that I am about to touch her keel. So I just say, Sika, touch. And I reach in, pretend this is her, and I'm feeling her keel. So we're getting a body condition score, and we're feeling how much muscle there is in conjunction with her keel muscle, which is the bone that runs down the middle of their chest. It's kind of like a sternum, and that is a really good health indicator for us. So there's some exceptions, but we're never petting them or anything like that. Do the eagles have partners and nest building materials? So this is a really interesting question. When it comes to partners, they are monogamous in the way of opportunity, I would say. So bald eagles will be monogamous as long as their mate is giving them successful offspring. When it comes to female choice, so out in the wild, when the female is choosing the male, they will do some pretty intense courtship rituals. They will, you might have seen some videos on YouTube, or maybe if you've been to the Raptor Center, you might have heard us talk about this. But it's really interesting because what they do is when the male is trying to woo the female, again, what's called female ways in the natural world, what they're doing is they go 2 to 3 miles up in the sky, they lock talons, and then they sort of free fall in this whirligig sort of pattern. And what the female is trying to test is, okay, I have this male here, he wants to have offspring with me. Is he agile enough? Is he a good flyer? Is he fearless enough for me? And so they're twirling, 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 and at the last minute, they will split apart. And again, it's the male trying to prove to the female that I am a really strong partner for you. I'm going to give you really strong offspring. And sometimes there have been some recorded cases of the female not liking the male, and therefore she actually slams him into the ground. So it's pretty cool, and it has been documented quite a bit. And so let's say the female chooses the male, and they are building a nest together for the first time. Again, they will be monogamous. So as long as that male or female is giving successful offspring, every single year they will come back again to the same nest site. And so when I say they're monogamous, I more so mean that they're loyal to the nest site and the opportunity rather than the mate itself. If I'm the female and the male dies, I'm just going to go off and I'm going to find another male, right? Because the end goal of everything in the world is reproduction and survival. And so again, if the male is not producing successful babies, then that female will no longer given her resources and her time and energy to be able to stick with a male that's not producing successful offspring. And so when they do start building a nest, it's a very time extensive and energy extensive procedure, honestly. They both take part in it. both male and female will start building the nest. They will both start hauling up logs and branches and sticks up to the nest site, and it takes quite a bit of time. And there are a lot of things that go into the nest building, because you have to remember that if they're having successful offspring, they're going to be coming back to this same nest site every single year for 20 plus years, or however long that female is reproductive. And so when they're building this nest, they really take their time, and they're really, really good nest builders. There are some studies that show that the male does do a little bit more of the detail work when it comes to kind of putting the sticks exactly where he wants it to be. And the female, while he is building this nest and kind of finishing up the final touches, he's building the egg cup, or where the eggs are going to sit. The female, that's kind of her cue to be able to say, okay, I need to be reproductively ready. I'm getting ready for copulation. It's sort of like it's a literal cue. Once that female sees the male nest building or continuing to nest build, then she's getting ready for reproduction. And therefore, you're upping your success rate for a successful clutch. And so they both take part in it, but the male is definitely doing a little bit more of the final touches and things like that. When it comes to nest building materials, that was another part of the question. There's a lot of different nest building materials. Again, literal logs, hauling up logs, branches, twigs, moss, any sort of like soft substrate they will bring up to the nest. You'll see the male sort of digging and layering these soft materials on the bottom of the nest, again, for the egg cup. And they are kind of just bringing whatever is available. And along with that, while they're building the nest, their bond between the male and the female is getting even stronger, especially if they're a new couple. If they're a new pair, then they're going to be doing quite a bit of other courtship sort of rituals past the whole, what we call the death spiral, or twirling out of the sky, that first initial encounter. They're going to be vocalizing together, perching and vocalizing together. We see them body brushing, or sort of not really preening, but kind of going down the body, touching beaks. A lot of that. You also see that with mom and baby eagles once the babies are born. You'll see them peck each other, but lots of vocalizations, and you'll even see the male bring the female little food gifts and things like that. So the nest building is a lot more than the physical building of the nest. It's the bonding of the male and the female, really strengthening their bond, and the actual physical building of the nest as well. All right. How do the eagles show off their natural behaviors? A lot of ways. So like I said, Sika's been here for 20 years, and she still is very much a bald eagle. We see and hear a lot of screaming. So pretty much the number one vocalization that bald eagles will do is the territorial cackle, sort of screech. And so Sika does a lot of screaming, especially when she's broody or when she's in her hormonal sort of breeding season. She'll be very vocal. All of our eagles do that. They kind of lift up their head and start screaming. I'm sure you've seen a few videos of ours where we've posted that. It hurts our ears, doesn't it, Sika? It does. She's looking at me like, so what? But they do lots of screaming. For other natural behaviors, we try and, again, the enrichment that we give them. So the things that we give them to engage with that kind of stimulate their brains, it's a little bit outside of their normal routines. One of those examples could be giving them a deer carcass, and one of their natural behaviors is being able to scrape and dig and get those bones, because these guys are big scavengers out in the wild. And they're sharpening their beaks while they're doing that, and it's fabulous enrichment for them. So we're making sure we're offering enrichment that is more so aligned with their natural behavior. We're giving lots of paper to rip up and shred, because they do lots of shredding and digging. That's the main point of their beautiful big beaks, that's why they're hook-shaped, is so that they can dig into prey or dig into whatever object that they're tearing into, and they're able to kind of scoop it out. So enrichment is really aligned with their natural behavior and their natural history. We do some fun things in the summertime. Right now with avian influenza, not so much, but we have the beautiful Indian River running behind us, so we'll take them down to the river and let them swim on creance lines. A creance line is basically a very long lead or leash that we have here at the center, where they can kind of go a little bit of a farther distance from us and the glove that they're tethered to. And so it's kind of like a seatbelt, but a long seatbelt. And so we'll take them swimming. Bald eagles are phenomenal swimmers. It's great exercise for them, and they sort of do a beautiful butterfly stroke in the water. So that's something fun that we'll do that sort of aligns with their natural behavior. And we, in kind of align with that, we'll also make sure to do lots of flight training, depending on the bird and depending on their injury. It's very specific for every ambassador bird. But with Sika here, I need to make sure to maintain her flight muscles, because if you don't, just like humans, if you don't use it, then you lose it. And so we worry about atrophy of muscles not being used. And so we really make sure to keep her flying short distances, longer distances, working her way up to that, and making sure that she's using those wings properly. Where does Sika's name come from? Sika, where does your name come from? Would you like to answer that? She says no. So Sika, as you know, we are based in Sitka, Alaska, and originally Baranof Island was referred to as Sika, and from there, it was essentially named for the people who originally inhabited Baranof Island. And so from Sika, we got Sika. Sika, here she is. What is something that Sika does that is goofy or surprising? So this question is interesting, and I absolutely want to answer it, but I also want to preface it with a little bit of a disclaimer. You know, whenever it comes to doing anything in my position, I want to make sure that I am, again, like we talked about before, kind of treating her with the respect that she deserves. That being said, she does have her own personality, and she does have, she does have her goofy moments, but that's really anthropomorphizing her. So anthropomorphizing is when I'm taking my human emotions and my human sort of thoughts and feelings, and I'm putting them on a bird that doesn't necessarily feel or think at all in the way that I do. And so when I say that Sika's being goofy, it's more so from my perspective. It's not so much from her perspective, right? And so the other day I had her on the glove right here, and I took a tissue and I was blowing my nose, and she reached up and she grabbed the tissue from my hand, and then she threw it back behind her. And that made me laugh, and I thought that was goofy. And, it is in my eyes, but for her, she was probably just exploring her surroundings and kind of being curious. And because they have such a good relationship, because she has a good relationship with me, she feels comfortable to explore those surroundings and that environment and that particular situation. And so for me, I say it's goofy, but is it really? I don't know. It's a lot of it's more so a lot of my projection of my feelings. But I do think she has a lot of personality. We call her the diva here at the center because she can be very sassy, and she is very vocal, and she can be silly. But again, that's me projecting. You can toss a little, right now it's snowing, you can toss a little snowball and she'll kind of walk over and grab it and chew it up. Silly things like that. But again, it's more so her feeling comfortable enough to engage with her environment and be curious, because these birds are very curious with their surroundings. And that's a good marker for me to know that we have a good relationship and that she's feeling safe because she's willing to do so. All right. What training goes into making a bird like Sika more comfortable around people? A lot of work, a lot of trainers, and a lot of food, I would say. So raptors, again, the number one drive for our training sessions is going to be food, of course. So weight management is really important. We get her weight every single day to make sure that she's staying at a good, healthy weight. And so when I go in to train Sika, she needs to be a little bit hungry for her to be motivated to kind of work with me. And so when it comes to training, it's very different for every single bird. Not every single bird is the same. It differs between the actual bird. It differs between species. Bald eagles in the training world are known to be one of the hardest species of bird to train. They're very smart in the way that in what they know how to do. And again, they can be very, very sassy, and they can be very, again, that's a human word, but they can be a little difficult. Because again, out in the wild, they have to be. They're apex predators. They're at the very top of the food chain, and they need to be kind of like on their game all the time. Even though, again, there's not many things out there that will eat them, they still don't really know what's coming for them or when their next meal is going to be. And that filters over into when they're ambassadors. And so they can definitely be difficult to train. And so with Sika, a bird like Sika, it just takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. It takes the right person. You definitely need to be confident. You need to be, you need to know, I don't want to say know your stuff, but it takes a lot of mentors and things like that. I know my training mentor, Kaylee, she helps me every single day with this little lady. I'm her primary trainer, and Kaylee worked with Sitka for many, many years before me. And so all of Kaylee's knowledge is being passed down to me, and that helps me understand Sitka even more, because 99% of my job is reading my bird's body language and trying to understand what they're telling me in a training session. And so it takes a lot of work to get a bird to be comfortable. And again, it's very different for every single bird that comes in here. And it's also different in the age, what age they are when they first come into under human care as well. That's a very, very short answer to that question. Do we clip their wings or prevent them from flying? Absolutely not. The birds that can fly, a lot of our birds unfortunately have injuries that prevent them from flying. But for the most part, the birds that can fly, we make sure to strengthen that ability and keep it top notch. So we try to fly our birds, whether that be from glove to glove or whatever it may be, we really try to make sure that we're keeping those flight muscles nice and healthy, because again, we don't ever want to clip their wings or anything like that. And that's a big reason we use falconry equipment to make sure that they're tethered. So a lot of people get kind of concerned when they see Sika here, and she has her what we call jesses leading down into a braided leash that you might be able to see. All of that is handmade here at the center by us avian care specialists, based on the size of their feet, based on their weight, based on a whole bunch of different things. And it's essentially like a seatbelt, because Sika can fly, and because they're wild animals, there's still a lot of things that scare them and spook them, and instinctually, their brain is always going to tell them, fly away, get away from this situation. And when you have an education bird working in front of, I don't know, 100-person crowd, 200, 300-person crowd, maybe you have a crying toddler over here, maybe you have someone who coughed over there, someone who was shouting over there, whatever it may be, there's some things that scare them. And so for their protection and for your protection, we often, we will always have them tethered either to our glove or to the bow perch or wherever they are. And when they go home at the end of the day into their enclosures, they're what we call free lofted. So we take off all the gear and she can go wherever she wants. Oh, that's a big yawn, very big yawn. She says, I'm kind of tired. Can I get some food? Yes, in a minute you can. Okay, let's see. Oh, this one's a little bit related to this last question. Even after training, will looking the bird in the eye spook them? It's very dependent on the bird. I'm primary trainer for Sika here, and I don't stare at her in the eyes. Like, I don't like make eye contact, and I don't just like stare at her or anything when she's on the glove. But I definitely do look at her. There's some birds that I don't do that with. Pele, our peregrine falcon, he's a little bit more sensitive. If you were to look at him in the eyes, he would probably explode. Not really, but he'd be very nervous, because the biggest thing that we have to remember is we are predators. Even though Sika could probably kick my butt if she wanted to, I'm still a predator to her. I have my forward-facing eyes. I have this big mouth with these gnashing big teeth, and I'm scary. I walk on two legs. I'm very imposing, and I'm a predator. And so, especially when you have smaller birds, or really any bird, because we're predators to all of them, then you have to remember that any way that your body language is communicating to them is probably going to be a little scary to them. Even if they have the best training in the world, you still have to make sure to kind of keep an eye on that. And one of the ways we do that is by not staring them directly in the eyes. Because what does that say to you? It says, I'm about to eat you, and your life is going to end. And so we really tried not to do that. Onyx, our common raven, who is one of the birds we have here at the center, it took me a long time before I was able to look him in the eyes, because he is an incredibly intelligent bird. You probably know. I won't get into that. I'm going to start yapping about him. But he's incredibly smart. And it took me a very long time for him to trust me enough for me to be able to like look at him for even 5 seconds. So it was pretty impressive when he allowed me to do that. But we're predators, we're scary, and that is the consensus on that. So some birds, yes, it does spook them. How long does it take for a resident to become comfortable working with our handlers? Again, very specific to the bird, specific to the handler. It just depends on the bird. Do they recognize specific people like their favorite handler? I would say, again, favorite handler is something more so of like, like a human projection. I, being Sika's primary, I work with her the most. So she's very familiar with me. She's familiar with my voice, the way I walk. She's familiar with the way my body moves, with how I talk with my hands all the time. She's very familiar with all of those things. She's familiar with our colors that we wear here at ARC, this kind of brown, and then we wear khakis in the summer. So she's familiar with all of those things. She absolutely recognizes my face, and she's used to my routine. And so does she have a favorite? Probably not, no. But she definitely, I think she has dislikes as well. I think that she would probably, she'll let you know if she doesn't like you. She's very vocal. She'll put up her mohawk if she doesn't enjoy your presence. Her body language is extremely expressive if she does not like you. So she definitely, I don't know if she has a favorite, but she does know the people she does not like. All right, let's go a little bit more into bald eagle natural history. This is pretty exciting. What do you think, Sika? Would you like a little tidbit? Unfortunately, no. All I have in my food pouch for her is a nice chunk of rat, and that has to be used for kennel training later. So, sorry, Sue. What do you think? All right, so can we feed our residents live prey, like a starling or a rabbit? Starling, that's a very interesting animal to choose for that one. Starlings are so smart. We do not usually feed live prey to our birds. Our ambassador birds, we do not. And that's because all of our birds are here because of pretty severe injuries. And that is going to prevent them from being able to usually hunt successfully. So if I am a peregrine falcon in my enclosure with a broken or a former broken wing, and I can't fly, I can't really hunt really well, and I have a rabbit running around in my enclosure, that's going to stress me out. I won't be able to hunt it successfully. I'm probably going to get hurt myself because that rabbit fights back or that rat fights back. Rats can be very vicious. And so we do not feed live prey because it's a safety issue and it's stressful. You know, no one wants to be seeing this delicious food item and not be able to successfully get it. And so we don't do that for ambassadors. For our rehabilitation birds, there are some species that we will absolutely live prey test before we release them. One of those being owls. The owls have to pass a string of live prey tests before they can be released back out into the wild. And that's because it's incredibly important that we know for 100% fact that they can hunt before we release them back out in the wild. And so, for example, we had a western screech owl recently. He passed all 3 of his live prey tests where literally we put in a mouse in a kind of a controlled, let's say like a pool. We had a little baby pool that we put it in with some moss and some rocks, made it relatively easy for the bird. The next live prey test, we're going to make it a little bit harder for the bird to hunt. So we're going to add tunnels. We're going to add, different obstacle courses. And then if that bird's able to pass that test, then great. And then we do one more, and then they can get on out of here, hopefully. So usually no live prey unless it's for rehab birds and they are a specific species. How smart are bald eagles? Sika, I think you're very smart. What do you think? She's looking at her feet right now. So Sika and bald eagles in general, I would say are relatively smart for what they know how to do. Are they as smart as a raven or a crow or other corvid? No, they are not. But they are phenomenal hunters. They are pretty good at flying. They are pretty good at being a bald eagle. And so they're smart in that way. I think intelligence and the way that we think about it in my human brain is pretty limited. So I think my human definition of intelligence and my awareness of Sika and her personality and knowing bald eagles and their history, I would say bald eagles are smart in what they know how to do. How big and how much do bald eagles weigh? Well, I'll tell you. Anyone in the chat want to guess how much Sika weighs? Let's get some engagement here.
We have a lot of engagement. I've been letting you just go, but there's been a lot of questions. Most of them we've been slowly covering. We'll get to a couple that haven't been written down soon.
Okay. Anyone want to guess how much Sika weighs? 100 pounds? 100 million pounds? Just kidding.
Someone said 12 pounds, 10 pounds, 15, 33. Let's see where we at. 27, 14, 80.
80
10,
pounds. Wow.
60.
You guys.
We're getting a wide variety.
You guys probably think I'm so strong. I appreciate that. I am pretty strong, so thanks. But I don't think I could hold 80 pounds in a right angle for as long as I hold Sika. Sika's not 80 pounds, although she looks 80 pounds, and she even looks 20 pounds. What if I were to tell you guys that actually Sika is only about 14 pounds? There were some correct answers in the chat. Very good, guys. You probably have seen our videos about that. Yeah, she is only about 14 pounds, and she is actually our largest female ambassador eagle. She's on the larger end. Most females tend, and this is in Alaska, remember our Alaskan bald eagles, raptors, everything in Alaska when it comes to our animals are typically a little bit larger for a multitude of reasons. But with Alaskan bald eagles, we typically see that females, range from 11 to 14-ish pounds, give or take. There's always some outliers. And males tend to range from about 6 to 10 pounds. Leading theory as to why that is that along the evolutionary timeline of things, it made more sense for females to weigh a little bit more because the females do majority of the incubating of the eggs. Now, I'm not saying that dad doesn't take turns. He absolutely does, but mom does most of it. But it also goes into different hunting niches as well. It's really interesting. If I'm a mom eagle and I'm in the nest with my mate and I have 2 babies, and those babies are really, really young and they don't need as many calories, dad is going to be the one to go out and get the smaller prey items because he's the smaller of us two. And he brings those back and he's feeding the babies, and that's all great and dandy. But then those babies get larger and larger and larger, and they need more calories every single day to be able to hit their developmental markers. And so that's when mom's like, hold on, let me go out, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the big ticket prey items because I'm the biggest of us two, and I can do that. I can hunt a big old 14-pound, no, sorry, not 14 pounds, a big salmon, and you're going to get this tiny rabbit. But our babies need more food. And so mom is the one that goes out once those babies are a little bit older, and she brings the big ticket items home. So it's interesting. Then again, it's just a theory, so it's being studied, but nothing is for sure. Okay. How good is an eagle's hearing? Not that great. Compared to like an owl, not as superb. But it is pretty good. It's just kind of like our hearing. They rely much more on their eyesight, which is about 8 to 9 times better than our eyesight, to give you an idea. What is a bald eagle's...
Real quick before we move on from that, we did have several people ask, where are the bald eagle's ears? They don't see any ears.
Wow. Her ears are underneath her feathers. So she's looking at you kind of straight on right now. You see her eyes, they kind of sit right here. Well, literally where my ears are. Funny. But they're underneath her feathers, and they are nice large holes. That's where her ears are. Okay. What is a bald eagle's life expectancy in the wild versus human care? So you heard me say Sika's about 24, 25 years old. In the wild, we typically see that bald eagles will get into their 20s, maybe mid-20s, which is already relatively old for most raptor species out in the wild. And you have to remember that bald eagles and other raptor species aren't dying of old age out in the wild. They're usually dying because they sustain some sort of injury, usually given to them by humans, that prevent them from flying or hunting successfully. And so their life ends because of that. In captivity, however, you can double or triple that number. And that is because Sika and our ambassador animals They are getting routine health exams. You heard me say prior, they're getting x-rays, blood work. We're checking old injuries. We're feeding a very specific diet, one that is as natural as it can be for her species. So we're feeding about 80% shallow water fish and about 20% red meat because these guys love to scavenge. And so we try to feed them a very specific diet, one that we know is as healthy as can be. And they're not having to fight for their lives every single day out in the wild when they're under human care. And so all of those factors kind of play into allowing these guys to live quite a bit older. But with that, comes a responsibility to make sure that we are watching for age-related diseases that they will never get in the wild because they don't reach 40 years old. So something that we are concerned about right now with Sika is arthritis, which is a very, very common, one of the most common diseases for an animal in captivity. And so especially when they have certain injuries. And so for us, it's give and take. We have the privilege of having such a beautiful bird living for X amount of time under human care, but with that comes a lot of responsibility. So we keep a very close eye on that. Do eagles play? Not really. They engage with their environment, and I think that general curiosity leads them to, like I said, engaging with their environment. But they don't really play socially like you would see a pair of crows or chimpanzees or parrots. Maybe you have some parrots at home. They don't really play like that. And again, you heard me say prior that they're really only engaging for mating, fighting over food, territory, those sorts of things. And so for the most part, you're not going to see them hanging out and, I don't know, wrestling or playing or whatever it may be that you can see other avian species do. And that's pretty much true with all raptor species. So yeah, overall, I would say no, they do not. Are the eagles aggressive? They can be, absolutely. Eagles are known to be kind of spicy sometimes. Again, human word, human emotion. But she, especially in her hormonal sort of breeding season, in the summertime, aka the summer, she can be very, 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 not very, very aggressive, but she can be aggressive. She can be a little bit more bitey. She can be very screamy. She can just be a little bit more territorial of her space. And so it's really important that she sticks to her routine in the summer of coming out of her enclosure and engaging with her environment in other ways outside of her house, her enclosure, her mew, because she gets very territorial of that. And so that is, again, where I come in terms of reading her body language and that mutual respect. If I go into her enclosure and she's telling me, absolutely no, I don't want to go out of my mew right now to do this educational program, I have to listen to that. Does that happen often? Not really. But I do need to listen to that because giving her that choice and control over the situation, one, increases the trust that we have in our relationship. And again, it's just overall better for their health because, again, they feel like they have some control in the situation rather than being forced out of their enclosure. And so that's a little tangent I just went on. But for the most part, yes, they can be aggressive. Even our ambassador eagles, the bald eagles that come in as rehab birds, the birds that have never been held by a human before, oh yeah. Especially the females, they are very large, they are very strong. We don our leather welding jackets, big leather gloves. They could still puncture through that, but with our training, we know how to handle them as best we can. And they are trying to get out of this situation. And if they can't feel like they can get out of this situation, then they try to fight. So they're using their feet. Their feet are their main weapons. So sometimes we get asked, is it nerve-wracking to have an eagle so close to our face, whether we're restraining for a rehab bird or an eagle on the glove? Their beak is definitely an issue, but it's more so just a tool out in the wild. They're using it again to kind of scoop into their prey to eat. The talons are really what you got to watch for. And so they have about 2,000 pounds of pressure in each feet, and they use them. If you've ever seen a video of us capturing one of our bald eagles in the Bald Eagle Flight Training Center to do a reevaluation maybe before release, what they do sometimes, the really crazy ones, will if you corner them or if they feel like they can't get away, they'll flip on their backs and they'll start going like this with their feet. What's that, Sika? What is that? River, do you see her? So cute. Yeah, they start doing that with their feet, and it's crazy. It's kind of scary. So you have to be on your toes, and you have to, for lack of a better phrase, haha. But you have to be on your toes with that, and know how to handle them, and know how to work around that for their safety and for our safety. Can bald eagles hybridize with other eagles? Specifically, this is about a supposed hybrid bald seller back in 2005. So currently, there are no published records of any sort of hybridization that has happened between a Seller's eagle, a Seller sea eagle, and a bald eagle. Now, does that mean it's never happened? Absolutely not. But nothing on record so far. So nothing that I know about. I know there was some talk here in the Alaska land. In Juneau, there was some talk in 2007 about there was a mated pair of a stellar sea eagle and a bald eagle. Did they ever produce a successful offspring? I really have no idea. But currently, right now, there's nothing published about that. So, there's lots of hearsay. Do they molt or shed? Yes, these guys do molt. Sika here is probably the biggest molter I've ever encountered. She molts for like the entire summer, and that is typical. They'll molt maybe once or twice a year, give or take, and it kind of depends. Molting is incredibly important for us. So molting, first of all, for those of you who don't know, is when they drop their old feathers that may be damaged or old, and then they're growing in a set of new feathers. This is incredibly nutritionally, it takes a lot of nutrients, and so it's kind of tiring for them. But they're dropping all the old, damaged feathers, and they're bringing in some new, beautiful feathers. And when they're doing this, kind of just lost my train of thought. But essentially, when they are molting, it can kind of depend on the bird, but it takes usually a spectrum. It's kind of a spectrum in terms of how long it takes. And with Sika, she molts for quite a long time. But what I was going to say before is that molting is really important for us to watch, because when we have a bird going through a molt, we want to make sure that they're completing that molt. So they're getting through all of their old feathers and they're bringing all their new feathers in, because that's a really good indicator for health for us, to see how our eagles are doing, because feathers overall are a good indicator of health. The way that they look, the way that they sit, how shiny they are, how well placed they are, if they're dirty versus clean. We look at feathers for a lot of different markers here in not only rehab, but in our ambassador birds too. It's kind of a jumbled answer, but there you go. Okay. If their beaks are made from keratin, why is the beak yellow and their nails black? This is a very interesting question. One that is full of a lot of theories. There is nothing yet proven as it goes in the world of science, but theories that kind of suggest a number of different ideas, and we'll kind of go through those. First of all, yes, they are keratin-based. So just like our fingernails or our hair, they will grow back, and they continuously grow. But then if they're keratin-based, if they're both keratin-based, why is there such a difference in color? So the color comes from carotenoids, and the carotenoids are coming from their diet. And along with that, their hormones. So the diet, salmon, lots of salmon for these guys, and other sorts of things full of carotenoids. And along with that, she's a sexually mature bald eagle as well. So all of those hormones are kind of set in stone, and both of those things together give that yellowish sort of color. In terms of why yellow and then black, it's hard to say. There's a few different theories out there. One, that the yellow beak and the yellow beak in particular marks a sexually mature eagle. So, hey, I'm ready for reproducing. Let's have offspring. There's also another theory out there that suggests the brighter the beak is, the brighter the cere is, which is that soft tissue right where you see her nares or her nostrils. The brighter the cere, the brighter the beak, the healthier the eagle is. So, hey, in the world of natural selection, in the world of fitness, I'm the most fit eagle, female choice. I want to go over there and get with that male because he has the brightest cere and he's going to give me beautifully genetically strong children or offspring. So there's a lot of different theories out there. We don't exactly know. Another theory is that the talons being black, the melanin in there can help increase the strength of that talon, and that's true with feathers as well. They say that the dark sort of chocolatey brown feathers or black feathers are overall stronger than something like a white feather or any other color feather because it has more melanin, and the more melanin, like I said, increases the strength and therefore helps protect from ectoparasites, from bacterial growth, especially here in like a temperate rainforest. And so maybe that's why they're black, is because they're hunting with their feet and they need to grasp and they need to do everything with their feet. So their talons need to be incredibly strong. That can kind of show you how much of a traumatic force must have happened to Sika's middle digit to kill that talon. And they're very, very strong. So there's lots of different theories out there. We don't exactly know, but those are just a few. Why do bald eagles steal if they are powerful enough to hunt? Because it is easier and it takes less energy. Even though, and you guys heard me say this prior, even though these guys are at the very top of the food chain and not many things out there hunt them, we are their biggest predator, but we're not actively hunting them anymore. Historically, we used to. But because they do not know when their next meal is going to be, they are going to always go for the easier meal. So if you come here to Sitka when the salmon are running and they're returning to their birthplace to then die and continue the cycle, the eagles love to feast on the dead salmon or the zombie salmon per se. And you'll see them on the side of the bank eating a dead salmon carcass, and they will much prefer that over going out into the water of Sika Sound and hunting a live salmon. And that's simply because it takes a whole lot more energy for them to go out, fly over there, look around for fish, and go down and actively hunt and kill a fish, rather than going out into on the bank and seeing that dead salmon, or maybe they're coming across a deer carcass or the gut pile that the hunter left out a day ago or whatever it may be. So they're going to steal because it's easier, and especially if they come across a juvenile eagle with something that they want, they know that they are more powerful and more agile than that other juvie bald eagle is. They haven't had as much experience as, let's say, a 10-year-old bald eagle, and so they know that's an easy meal. So it's simply because of energy expenditure. All right. Can you explain the 5 years to get the white head? So the white head, the full white head, full yellow beak, white tail, marks a sexually mature eagle, and that happens at the age of 5. Prior to that, I would recommend looking this up if you haven't seen. A lot of people get them confused.
We have great videos on our social media that explain this recently.
Oh yes, we have very good videos on our social media that explain this recently, if you want to watch that. Probably one of my videos. But what happens is when they are hatch years, when they've just left the nest, they are all sort of brown, mottled brown and black. Their eyes are like a deep chocolatey brown. Their beak is black, and they really look quite a bit different. They actually look quite a bit like golden eagles. People get them confused. And so as they age, year after year, they are getting more and more white adult plumage or feather color until they look like this beautiful quintessential bald eagle named Sika. Right, Sika? Yes. If you look closely to her, she actually has one tiny little black feather right in the middle of her head, like right there. It's very cute. And when she's angry, she raises her mohawk, and you can see it even more. Right now, she's very, very relaxed, so that's a good thing. But anyway, so when they are sexually mature, they have the full white head and the full yellow beak and the white tail. But prior to that, they don't. And that's a quick answer. They are that way because the way they are. Did anyone laugh at that, Richard?
Well, I can't hear them. They can just hear us.
Oh. Well, I mean in the chat, did anyone type ha 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 ha? Sometimes I want to show my personality on these things, but I never know if I should. Am I right, River? Yeah. So make it a little bit more personal. Okay. How can crows get away with harassing eagles? Simply because eagles, well, there's a lot of different reasons. If you've ever seen an eagle, what?
The lols are now coming into the chat.
Oh, good. You guys like my personality? I've heard it's not bad. Okay, anyway, she loves my personality. No, I'm just kidding. She probably hates me. Just kidding. Okay, anyway. I agree, Sika. Okay. How can crows get away with harassing eagles? There's a lot of different reasons. You might have seen some videos of a bald eagle, or any raptor, really, sitting up in a tree. Maybe they're taking a snooze, and they're having a midday siesta. And then you see these crows, maybe ravens. Sometimes it's a songbird, like chickadees or other sorts of songbirds. And they're doing a behavior called mobbing. They're getting together in groups, and they are annoying that bird of prey. Why? Because that bird of prey is a predator to them. And that chickadee is like, if I don't get this great horned owl out of my area right now, when he wakes up from his nap, he might come and eat my whole family. You never know. And so they want that predator out of their area. And so they do a technique called mobbing, where essentially they'll kind of come and dive bomb. Sometimes they bonk them on top of the head. Sometimes they don't make contact, but they'll kind of dive and swoop around. Oh, yes, Sika. Yes. She's very curious. Sometimes they'll come down and dive, get really close, and then zip away. And they're essentially annoying that bird of prey into leaving their area because, again, it's a predator and they don't want it around. When it comes to crows, they are very mischievous and they have the intelligence level to be mischievous. And so they're very agile in flight. They can, in terms of how can they get away with it, it's because they're fast, they're speedy little guys, and they're very smart. They know how to maneuver around this big bird of prey. And also, that's a lot of energy for the eagle itself. The eagle is not going to all of a sudden get up and start chasing the crow because that is way too much energy for that eagle. It doesn't make any sense. And so, if anything, they'll just leave the area or ignore them. How can you tell male from female bald eagles? The weight. You heard me say prior that the females are typically quite a bit larger than the males. But that's it. In terms of what we call sexual dimorphism, so if I were to look at a male mallard duck and a female mallard, the male has that bright, beautiful green head to attract females. That sexual dimorphism is very apparent. When it comes to bald eagles and most raptors, they don't really have any of that sexual dimorphism. They look exactly the same. So when I get a bald eagle in rehab, we're getting its weight, and we're looking at the size of their feet. Because females, their feet are very, very large. Now, there's always exceptions to that. We've seen some males with very large feet too. But it just kind of gets us an idea, and then we'll get a weight, and that's a little bit more confirmed. You can do a blood test. The blood test isn't always 100% always accurate. There have been some mistakes with that, but that's also an option. Okay, what is their max speed and height? So typically, they're not going to go that too much high because what's the point of flying? Is usually hunting or moving from territory A to B, territorial-wise. And in terms of flying, maybe 20 to 40 miles per hour. They're not the fastest guys on the planet, but when they want to dive and go down to get their food, they can reach up, I've read up to 100 miles per hour. So that's pretty cool. Right, Sika? She says, back in my day. Back in my day. How do they keep their beaks trimmed in the wild? By eating lots of bones and carcasses, digging into their prey items. They're going to be perching on rocks and different types of substrate. All of these things are kind of shortening their nails as they go. How far can an eagle rotate their head? Sika's kind of doing it for you right now. Oh, she's looking at you. About 180 degrees. Are eagles for sale? Absolutely not. Sika, I'll sell you for $1 million. What do you think? She says, okay. So no, bald eagles are not for sale. They're actually one of the most federally protected birds on this planet. As you guys may know, if you've been following us for a while and know a little bit about these guys, they were extremely close to extinction. Back in 1972, they had to be placed on the endangered species list because there was less than 500 breeding pair all across North America. That's like 1,000 bald eagles. That's crazy. There was a lot of reasons why they got so low in numbers. Things like DDT, the chemical pesticide DDT, habitat issues. So lack of nest sites, things like that. Hunting, especially here in Alaska. We have these guys used to be hunted for their beaks and their talons and things like that, and their feathers. And so because of all of that, and because of this sort of resurgence of the bald eagle as our national symbol, which originally was going to be the turkey, according to Benjamin Franklin, but it was not. Not a fan favorite, I guess. I like the turkey, though. Don't you, Richard? He shrugged. Turkeys are crazy. You want to talk about an aggressive bird? Rehab a turkey. Am I right? That's right. They're so mean. Anyway, and so they are extremely federally protected because they were so close to extinction, and all of these restoration efforts have been in place to help get their numbers back up. So places like us existing, protective legislature being put in place, the Bald Eagle Act, the Bald Eagle and Golden Eagle Act, the Migratory Bird Act, the Lacey Act. All of these things go into protecting these guys, so much so that if you're even found with a bald eagle feather, that can cause that can be a felony. It's kind of crazy how protected these guys are, but they're beautiful, and we should be protecting all of our wildlife. Am I right? Yes. And it really shows you. Nowadays, we are back up to almost pre-decline numbers. So before they started declining, they were at about 400,000 bald eagles all across, 500,000 all across North America, and today we sit around 400,000. So you can really see what protective legislature does for our bald eagles and for all of our wildlife. It's amazing. Eagles seem calm, are they? No, they are not. Why do eagles always look angry? What you're referencing there is called the supraorbital ridge. And this is an evolutionary adaptation that allows them to be able to soar around in the sky without being blinded by the sun. So it's this sort of bony ridge-like structure that sits right above their eye. It looks like this. And it makes her look angry all the time. But it's there to help protect and sort of shade from the sun. Okay, that's it for eagle history. Pretty cool. About the job. What type of education do you need to work with bald eagles? You need enthusiasm. I'm just kidding. You do need to be enthusiastic about wildlife conservation. That's a big part of our job. Right, Sika? So for me and my colleagues, I believe we all have degrees in some sort of wildlife-related field. For me, I have my bachelor's in conservation and environmental science with a focus in wildlife biology. I started working in the rehabilitation world about 11 years ago now, and worked in there on and off. All of that experience came from internships, from volunteering, things like that. When I was 14, I had a 4-year-long internship at my local zoo, which really introduced me to the world of conservation and what that can do for our wildlife species. I cleaned a lot of poop, and I still do. 28 years old, and I still clean a lot of poop, but that's okay. I like doing it sometimes. And I prepared a lot of diets, and I just got to be, wow, beautiful rouse. And I got to be around wildlife, and I got to see a lot of educational programs and be in those as well. And so if you have a local zoo around you, I recommend getting involved. They always have something. Even if you're under 14, you can be with a parent or guardian. Just get involved, see what's around you. Or if you have a nature center or Raptor Center or anything. But for the most part, you don't always need to have a college degree. You definitely do not. But it's more so important that you are passionate, that you are kind of understanding the need for something that for what I do, and why we want to serve our world's wildlife is incredibly important, because that makes you get through the job. Because our job is not super glamorous. You know, it's not paid super well. We see a lot of death in rehabilitation, unfortunately. We see a lot of really traumatic injuries. And so when you have that passion and you have the knowledge of this is why I'm doing this, and you see the results of that, then it helps you kind of get through that. So I would say those are a little bit more important than your college degree. But the college degree absolutely helps. I have friends who tell me that they don't know why they went to college and it was a waste of money. I see that's a pretty normal rhetoric, I think, these days. But for me, I use my college degree every single day. I am so grateful that I went to college, and I'm so grateful for financial aid and scholarships as well. It's always possible. So, okay. Have we heard of the game Wingspan, and have we seen any effect on interest in raptors? That's a really good question. I haven't played it myself, but I am familiar with it. Richard over here behind the camera is saying he likes it a lot.
We get a lot of questions about it each of the last couple of summers.
Oh, nice. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so it's definitely bringing some education.
Okay, great. That's good to know. It is bringing some education in. Richard and his department of interpreters or naturalists do a little bit more of the crowd engagement. And so he's saying he has heard the last few summers with that kind of being brought up and increasing interest. So that makes me super happy to hear. When are you retiring so I can take your job? Never. Just kidding. That's a great question. You should come volunteer at the Alaska Raptor Center. And if you can't volunteer here, if you can't come to this tiny little island, then I bet that there's somewhere around you within 20-minute drive that needs some help. Because we here at the center, 501c3 nonprofit, if you want to investigate that more, AlaskaRaptor.org is our website. Please look into it. But we really rely on our volunteers. And every single wildlife rehabilitation center you come across also very heavily relies on their volunteers. Some places don't even have full-time paid staff. And so if you want to get involved, if you want to learn a little bit more about this world, I recommend one, if you want to reach out to one of us via email, go ahead, do it. We can talk a little bit more about that. Otherwise, go volunteer at your nature center or your wildlife rehabilitation center. And again, it's a lot of cleaning, food prep, baby bird season, things like that. But for the most part, if you try and get involved, even if you have 1 hour a week free, it is beneficial. So I'm not retiring anytime soon. What?
Before we get to the last question, do you want to do some of the rapid fire questions that have come up so far?
Yes.
Perfect.
Rapid fire.
So the one question that kept on coming up a bunch because she is doing fantastic, is she comfortable sitting here in front of us, and is it normal for eagles to sit for so long?
Yes, she is telling me through her body language that she is feeling very comfortable. How do I know that? She has good tension in her feet, not too tight. She is not really staring at me or the camera or Richard, aka she's kind of ignoring us, which is really great. She is showing comfort behaviors like rousing, lifting up all those feathers and shaking them out. She's looking at her feet. She's engaging with her environment. So yes, she is comfortable.
And is that a natural behavior?
Is that a natural behavior? Yeah.
Can eagles eat human food?
Can eagles eat human food? Well, here on the island, we eat a lot of deer, bear, things like that. So yeah, they eat that sort of thing, but they don't really eat garbage.
The person specifically asked cheeseburgers.
Oh, I love a good cheeseburger. Oh, no, they don't eat cheeseburger. It's too fatty for them.
Have you ever been hit by a bird?
Huh?
Have you ever been hit by a bird?
Yes. Sika smacks me in the face with her large wingspan about 5 times a day. And I say it's punching me in the face because her humerus hits me and it's like right there. Or her wrist hits me. But yeah, yes.
And then this was the most common asked question. We got a couple more, but this one popped up so many times.
Okay.
Have you ever been pooped on / do you know how many times?
Oh my God. I leave work every single day with poop on me in some sort of fashion. On my pants, on my shoes, on my hands, in my hair, literally all the time, everywhere. Luckily, their poop is not that bad. Poop is mutes, M-U-T-E-S. It's a really good indicator for us of health. And so we do look at their mutes quite often. And so, but overall, yes, I get pooped on all the time. And probably over, oh my God, I've been doing this for a long time. So probably over 2,000 times.
Can any of the different species cohabitate here at the center?
It depends. With our with our raptors in residence, we do not house them together because again, they're solitary out in the wild, and you know, if Sika were to be housed with a Spirit, another eagle ambassador, that's very stressful, and there's just no need. And so we don't do that with that. There are some species in rehabilitation that we can put together, like our western screeches. We can.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
we can put western screech owls with western screech owls, not western screech owls with different species.
Yes. Yes. So conspecific. So we can put western screech owl with a western screech owl, but we don't ever want to mix those species. Same with onyx, our common raven. They're a very social species, so that could be looked into a little bit more. And same with if we have the ravens or crows or any sort of really social species in rehab, we will absolutely put them together, especially if they're babies.
Do any of the do the eagles get parasites?
Do the eagles get parasites? Absolutely, they can get ectoparasites and endoparasites. They can get quite a few different species, different strains. Luckily, Sika here, I don't think has suffered from any sort of endoparasite in as long as I've been here. And that is carefully monitored. We make sure to clean their mews very, very well, disinfect their mews once or twice a week, and kill anything that might be living in that. Ectoparasite-wise, yeah, she sometimes, not her in particular, but the bald eagles, especially in our bald eagle flight training center, will get feather mites, feather lice, louse, little kind of guys that crawl over. Sometimes they crawl onto you and they go into your hair. Luckily, our body temperature isn't warm enough, so they just kind of hop off after a few torturing hours. But they can, and they do. So we spray them for lice. You'll see in some of our videos, we'll do full spray down. And we'll also, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Have we seen any leucistic birds here at the center?
Have we seen any leucistic birds here in the center? Not in my time, but there is a leucistic raven in Anchorage right now, so maybe one day he'll come in here. Hopefully not, though.
Since bald eagle feathers are protected, who decides who gets them?
The government institution, the Feather Repository in Colorado, is again a government-controlled institution, and it doles out different feathers to indigenous communities for whatever they may want to do with that in terms of ceremonies, things like that. And it also gives feathers and things like that to museums for educational purposes.
And then someone asked a clarifying question. They said that we understand how we can't tell the difference between male and female bald eagles,
yes.
But their question specifically was, how do they tell each other apart?
How do they tell each other apart? You start birding. Get involved. No, it's very hard. If a bald eagle is 20 feet away from you, then...
How do bald eagles tell bald eagles apart?
Oh, how bald eagles tell bald eagles apart. I don't know. They just know. Instincts, man. Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Real quick before we get to that last question, I want to clarify for the audience, if you did not hear your question answered, there's a really good chance that we actually answered that question a little bit earlier in the live stream. So just scroll back a bit and you should be able to find that answer.
Yes, very good. All right, the last question of the day is, hold on, let me make sure we got these. Yes. All right, how can I support my favorite bird at the center? Wonderful question, whoever said this, in multiple different ways. If any of this goes over your head because you have been listening for X amount of time, Raptor.org, AlaskaRaptor.org is our website. So how can you support? Memberships, adoptions, engaging with our content, sending in donations, visiting us here at the center. We do adoptions of our birds, so you can adopt one of our birds, and so you can adopt Sika for a $75 fee. You get her bio, her picture, you get a few other things sent in the mail to you, and again, all of the money spent either here at the center or through our memberships, adoptions, all of that stays right here with our birds. Because we are a 501c3 profit, we do not get any governmental funding or anything like that. If you can, fly to Sika, come visit us. Just buying a ticket to come here is amazing. Otherwise, donation is a big help as well, which you can donate at AlaskaRaptor.org. I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for joining in on our live stream today. This was the most fun I've had in a while, so thanks. Again, if you're interested in learning more, go to AlaskaRaptor.org. We have so many different forms of social media. Richard, our developmental specialist, has us on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, the new Twitter name that I don't remember right now, X. We are on everything. We're super active on all of them. Also, March 22nd, this March 22nd at 11 a.m. AK time, we are doing our spring bald eagle release. So Richard is going to be live streaming that, and maybe if it all works out, it's hard because we're going to be outside, but tune in for that, and you guys could potentially be able to watch us release our 8 or 9 bald eagles that we've been rehabilitating over the months and months and months back out into the wild. It's a phenomenal thing. It's a community event. We invite the public out. I think that's about it. But thank you guys so much for being such a great crowd. I really enjoyed this. Sika really enjoyed it. She's going to go home and get a nice chunk of rat right now. She's very excited for that. And let us know if you enjoyed this. If you want to watch a little bit more in the future or have any ideas for a live stream, please comment down below. Go to our website, which is here if you're in some of the platforms. And Instagram and TikTok is right over here. All right, thank you guys. Bye-bye. Say goodbye, Sika.